It's a pleasure to be with you. This talk is titled Motivational Factors in Decision Making. There are no disclosures for this presentation. Objectives include review the communications model in the 7 dimensions of cultural distance, discuss the importance of individuals in initiating cultural change, discuss the common barriers and stimulants for change, review major factors that influence the process of community decision-making, review the attributes of the 4 major life orientations, discuss the 5 appeals to change, review decisive and indecisive cultures, and review Prochaska's stages of change model. How individuals or communities become motivated to make decisions is complex. Therefore, this talk will focus on a few general concepts that are important for community engagement facilitators to consider. Generally, there are a wide variety of motivational factors that influence communities to first consider and then take actions to change. At some threshold, communities move from considering change to making decisions that lead to change. Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver developed this cross-cultural communications model. This diagram lists parts to consider when communicating from the source to the respondent, including encoding, message delivery, decoding, context, noise, and feedback. Communication is extremely important for productive interactions between individuals and groups. This diagram also lists the 7 dimensions of cultural distance when communicating or interacting with another culture, or even between subcultures within a community or society. The more culture or group X differs from culture or group Y in the 7 dimensions listed on this slide, the greater the cultural distance between those cultures or groups. Those 7 dimensions include worldview or deep beliefs, cognitive processes or ways of thinking, linguistic forms or ways of expression, behavioral patterns or ways of acting, social factors or ways of interacting, media influences or ways of channeling messages, and motivational factors that lead to ways of deciding. This talk will focus on a few basic concepts regarding motivational factors, or how various cultures and communities are motivated to change and the processes they use to make decisions. This information informs how a community engagement facilitator approaches a community engagement process. George Foster in the mid-20th century stated that all cultural changes are initiated by individuals within a culture, but must be sustained and broadened by cultural constructs. This diagram attempts to explain how cultural change commonly occurs. An idea to change the cultural way of doing something is adopted by an individual or individuals within a community and culture. That idea may emerge from community members or from sources external to the community or culture. If some of those community members who have adopted the new idea include community horizontal communicators, and those horizontal communicators are at the 4th level of message identification, meaning that they want to make a personal change and be a messenger of that change to others, they then utilize their unique community status to influence other community members to accept and implement that cultural change. Community engagement experts can facilitate the community in a community engagement process to help them more effectively make their cultural change as diagrammed. Public health is well positioned to facilitate community engagement. A main point: it's the community and culture that decides to make a cultural shift or change, not an external expert. Major barriers to cultural change include tradition and ethnocentrism. These barriers are related to societal structures or heritage, ingrained ways of doing things that resist change. Fatalism, believing that situations are ordained by powerful outside factors like God, therefore being impossible to change. Pride and dignity, which assumes that admitting a need for change is excessively humiliating. Lack of support that includes community energy to initiate change and lack of material or other economic resources. Inadequate incentives, fear of the unknown or feeling different, misinformation and other negative media influences. Any individual, idea, community, or cultural process or program suggesting change is commonly resisted. Community engagement is all about positive community change. Expect resistance when facilitating community engagement. This slide lists some common stimulants to change. Not the change illustrated in this picture, though that is a common great stimulus to change something. We're referring to stimulants for people or groups of people to make changes. Those stimulants include desire for prestige, economic or some other gain or loss. For example, the death of a family member may provide a variety of economic and other opportunities for change. Other stimulants for change include competition, friendship obligations, which implies an element of social accountability, curiosity, religious appeals or beliefs, which are often very strong stimulants for change. Other stimulants include to resolve conflict, improve attitudes, desire for longevity of life, job, leadership position, etc., family and peer pressure, and desire to impact the future. This could apply to changing a cultural way of doing things in a community, state, nation, or international situation, etc. In cultural communications, change agents, including community engagement facilitators, must identify some point of contact with the target community, a fruitful place to begin a community engagement or change process. Generally, there are three major points of contact to look for, including beliefs, perceived or felt needs, and common attitudes of the change agent or facilitator and target community members. Public health often connects with other cultures or communities around the perceived or felt needs of the community. These are the issues the community is interested in addressing. These are the things community members will spend their time and resources on to change or improve. These perceived or felt needs of a community represent the sweet spot of engagement. Community engagement is facilitation of a process of problem solving, not just accomplishing a project. So community engagement and community change starts at a point of contact that's of interest to community members. I like this quote from Emil Hirsch. Identify with someone wanting something to work out, but not being able to get through the rocks to the river. That applies to public health, identifying a community that has a perceived need and facilitating them in a community engagement process of problem solving to get through the rocks to the river. An engaged community, a community possessing a well-developed process of problem solving, will continue to use that process to solve current and future problems. Decision-making is part of the problem-solving process. Communities and cultures are unique and often differ in the way they make decisions. Decision-making is one of the motivational factors of cultural distance. Understanding how communities make decisions is important information for community engagement facilitators. We live in a global community manifesting various cultural factors like life orientations and appeals to change that impact the way communities and cultures are motivated and ultimately how they make decisions. Let's consider a few of those cultural factors that influence decision making. Reisman in the 1960s described three basic life orientations: tradition-directed, inner-directed, and other-directed. The outlook of tradition-oriented societies is we always do it this way. The principal and primary goal is tradition and maintaining the status quo. These societies rely on structures that resist change. Decisions are made by the group through a more formal group process seeking consensus. Apollonian cultures, represented by traditional southwestern Pueblo tribes, practice extreme traditionalism and express great distrust of individualism. Individual decisions are thought to be too risky and tentative. These cultures may resist a Western leader-manager style. These societies follow clan and cultural heroes. Effective media to impact behaviors would include stories, myths, or true accounts of cultural heroes. The focus is on legacy, or remembering the forefathers, and on social harmony, not self-actualization. Let's now consider inner-directed objective cultures. Hesselgrave further subdivides Reisman's inner-directed orientations into objective and subjective. The outlook in inner-directed objective cultures is that something should be done because it's just the right thing to do. It's the law. It's written down. Conscience rules. The main goal is to expand frontiers, discover, adjust, and improve the world. Strong individuals decide in this orientation, and people are expected to follow through on their decisions. Tentativeness is not a virtue, but a flaw. They follow pioneers and visionaries. The strong Western leader management style fits well with this life orientation. Effective media for this group includes sermons or moving speeches by lawmakers and prophets based on absolute truths. Preach the truth that does not change, and let the chips fall where they may. There is a black and white in this orientation and little room for gray. There is no compromise with the truth. The focus is on me, the individual, and self-improvement. This is consistent with Abraham Maslow's self-actualization theory. The inner-directed subjective orientation still focuses on me and individual decisions, but has an Eastern mysticism element to it. The outlook is follow the gleam or revelation. Give attention to the inner self and find yourself in your identity. Models include successful businessmen and gurus. The philosophical and religious visionaries and successful businessmen obviously have special supernatural insights. It is this special supernatural insight that allows them to be individually successful. This life orientation also supports the Western strong manager-leader management model. Effective media to impact this group is quite different from the objective individualist and includes the arts, poetry, and reports of visions and success. The other directed life orientation likely describes the gradual transition in Western cultures over the past several decades to the present. The guiding principle is contemporaries or peers and situational ethics. The outlook is it's okay if everyone else is doing it. The goal is to blend or adjust within society. Group decisions are common, Yet these decisions are subject to change of mood and fashion. Group decisions in this orientation are more informal versus the tradition-directed orientation. The Western hierarchical management leader model may not fit this orientation well. Models are peers, music idols, actors, actresses, star athletes, etc. Effective media often focuses on messages and programs that help a person adapt and fit in, and may include things like counseling. The focus is on we, which is an interesting return toward the collectivity of the tradition-directed orientation of life. Associated with these various life orientations are 5 basic appeals to change, including to self, to social harmony, to authority, to reason and logic, and to shame and guilt. The to self and to authority appeals fit well with both inner-directed life orientations that focus on me or individualism. The reason and logic appeal may work best with the inner-directed objective, where social harmony would likely be more effective with the tradition-directed and other-directed life orientations. There are also shame and guilt cultures. In shame cultures, one only experiences shame when caught. In guilt cultures, one experiences guilt when violating their conscience, whether caught or not. This latter is a common attribute of inner-directed, particularly the inner-directed objective culture where the major principle is conscience. Appealing to conscience in shame cultures would not be very effective versus guilt cultures. We've talked about the various decision makers as related to life orientations. Let's now consider cultural decisiveness. All cultures generally lean toward either being decisive or indecisive. Some cultures place great value on decisiveness, and others on the ability to live with a degree of indecision. Western cultures generally favor decisiveness. Making any decision is better than no decision. Deliberations are expected to end in a decision or closure. Indecisiveness is considered a character flaw, evidence of someone not having the strength of character to commit one way or another. Decisions in Western cultures are considered binding. Many Eastern cultures are indecisive. When options are not clear-cut, it's better to make no decision than risk being wrong. Decisions in these cultures may be put off as long as possible. Deliberations in Eastern cultures often end without closure. Tentativeness is considered a sign of true wisdom. Decisions are not binding, as in Western cultures. As you can imagine, clashes often occur between decisive and indecisive cultures. To an Easterner, decision cultures are brash and foolish, quickly making decisions without knowing all the facts. To Westerners, indecisive cultures are often considered of poor character or deceptive, since they either refuse to make decisions or change their decisions. Understanding and applying these cultural concepts of life orientations, appeals to change, and cultural aspects of decision-making are important for manager, leaders, and community engagement facilitators, particularly those working in cross-cultural situations. In the tradition-directed and other-directed orientations to life, decision-making is generally a group process. There are a few differences, though. In the tradition-directed orientation, there is often a more formal group process to determine consensus versus the other-directed or peer group process, which is more informal. For example, after a presentation of behavioral change concepts to a Mayo community of Laos, the chief of that community announced that the entire community would become adherents to those behavioral changes. That decision was based on the results of extensive formal community discussions, input from community elders and household leaders. The formal group process of this tradition-directed culture took time. Only after those formal discussions, unanimously, by consensus, the community decided to become adherents. The chief didn't make that decision, but reported the result of the formal community decision-making process. Understanding how cultures and communities make decisions is important information for a community engagement facilitator. Let's briefly review Prochaska's stages of change and how that relates to public health, including community engagement strategies to change risky behaviors. Everyone is located somewhere within these 5 stages regarding a risky behavior as diagrammed. In the pre-contemplation stage, people say, "I've heard your message and am not interested." In contemplation, "I've heard your message and I'm thinking about change in the future, but not now." In preparation, "I've heard the message and will try something one time, but will not commit to regular behavioral change." This stage requires the person doing something, going to a seminar, trying exercise once, attending a class to stop smoking, etc. In action, "I've heard the message and have started doing an activity regularly, but for less than 6 months." In maintenance, "I've heard the message and have been doing a regular activity for more than 6 months." 6 months is important since research shows that practicing a behavior regularly for more than 6 months is associated with less relapse or recidivism. Many experts consider a person essentially cured of tobacco use when they've been tobacco-free for at least 6 months. Prochaska's stages of change are important for those designing programs in community engagement, since the mix of activities chosen for the program are dependent on where community members are at. Generally, every community has individuals scattered through all 5 stages regarding each risky behavior, a unique distribution for each risky behavior. It's important to know that distribution for each behavior being targeted by a community engagement process. For example, a community's distribution of interest to change risky sexual behavior may be dramatically different than the distribution of interest to change food intake. A major goal of community engagement is to move every person in the community from where they are on Prochaska's chart for targeted risky behaviors to the maintenance stage, to ultimately improve the individual's and whole community's health and wellness. There are various activities that apply to where individuals are located on this chart. On the left of the chart, where people are not interested or only considering a change, awareness activities are utilized. Good awareness activities reach virtually all of the community's members. People don't have a choice. They will hear or see the message. Examples could include posters, paycheck stuffers for a workplace, intercom or email messages, etc. The goal of effective awareness activities is to move individuals toward the center area of this chart, or the stage of preparation, where they will try a healthy behavior. For those located in the center area of the chart, education motivation activities like health screenings, seminars, challenges, resource rooms or services, etc. apply. These stages require the individual to do something. Go to hear a speaker. Try to avoid tobacco for 1 day. Take 1 walk during lunch break, etc. The goal of education and motivation activities is to move the person to the right, toward regular and sustained healthy behaviors in the action and maintenance stages. Intervention activities apply to individuals located in the action and maintenance stages, programs that help a person initiate and sustain those healthy behaviors. Interventions are more intense than awareness and education motivation activities, but this is where the real return on investment, ROI, in health occurs, including increased quality of life and decreased disease. Interventions are more expensive than awareness and education motivation activities. Many health and wellness programs get stuck in only providing awareness and education motivation activities and fail to develop the more intense intervention activities for community members, and unfortunately, never see significant health and wellness outcomes. Comprehensive health messaging and effective community engagement processes must have a plan to move all people in a target population from where they are to a state of better health. Finally, there are 3 evaluation categories for this model: formative, process, and outcome. All 3 of these evaluation tools can be used as applicable for any program activity. Formative evaluation is used to plan a program and is often associated with survey instruments to identify needs, resources, collaborators, etc. Process evaluation is used to measure methods and processes used to reach the desired outcomes, and often focuses on community member participation in activities. Outcome evaluation measures final desired outcomes related to the health and wellness of community members, including evaluating reductions in morbidity and mortality. Motive to change equals value. Values are based on the worldview or deep beliefs of a culture or community. Values are the things we believe are important in life. George Hohmann, a sociologist, said, "It all boils down to a simple equation. The profit of a behavioral change must demonstrate a greater reward versus the cost of making or sustaining that change for the individual." In other words, there must be a perceived significant benefit for an individual or community that outweighs the cost for them to make a decision to change. Abraham Maslow at one time criticized his fellow psychologists for not asking people about their motivations to make decisions to change rather than simply trying to deduce the changes that occurred. That criticism could also apply to us in public health. I trust the concepts we touched on in this community engagement course will help all of us be better at helping others change risky behaviors. In summary, decision-making is one of the 7 dimensions of cultural distance. Perceived or felt needs are a bridge to community engagement and community change. It's important for a community engagement facilitator to understand a community's life orientations, how they respond to appeals for change, and how communities make decisions to effectively facilitate a community engagement process. Utilize Prochaska's Stages of Change model to develop community health and wellness strategies.